Imagine tomorrow morning, every toilet on Earth disappears. You wake up, walk into the bathroom, and the floor is empty where the toilet used to be. For 5 seconds, your apartment building is silent. Then everyone realizes they have the same problem. 8 billion bodies are still on schedule. No one can postpone biology. Office towers have no backup plan. Airports have no backup plan. Schools, stadiums, restaurants, and hospitals have no backup plan. By lunchtime, trash cans become emergency toilets. By sunset, parks become negotiation zones. By day 2, the smell is not annoying anymore. It is a public order problem. By day 3, your city smells different when the elevator doors open. By day 5, drinking water starts to feel suspicious. By day 7, civilization starts to panic. Your city does not feel modern anymore. It feels medieval with Wi-Fi. Because toilets are not furniture. They are the thin porcelain line between civilization and everybody panicking with a bucket. And before toilets, that line did not exist. Start in a normal bedroom before indoor plumbing. The room is cold, the candle is almost out. The chamber pot sits under the bed like a ceramic jump scare. Some were plain clay bowls, some were fancy porcelain with painted flowers, because apparently panic deserved decoration. Some chamber pots were hidden inside chairs called clothes stools. That is basically a luxury gaming chair with a much darker purpose. At night, convenience meant keeping the toilet close enough to reach half asleep. That also meant keeping the smell close enough to become part of the furniture. In the morning, the pot had to be emptied. A wealthy household might make a servant carry it through the corridor. A poor household might dump it in a yard, a ditch, a gutter, or a pit behind the house. There was no flush. There was a decision. Outside, the privy waited like a tiny wooden punishment box. In winter, a bathroom trip meant boots, coat, mud, darkness, and one very serious conversation with your bladder. Your midnight walk today is tiles, tap water, and maybe checking your phone. Their midnight walk could include ice, thieves, stray animals, and instant regret. And here is the part that sounds fake, but is not. Stale urine was useful. The ammonia in it helped with cleaning, dyeing, tanning, and textile work. So yesterday's emergency could become tomorrow's industrial supply. In some places, collected waste also became fertilizer for fields. The loop was simple, horrifying, and efficient. The past recycled everything. Unfortunately, it also recycled smells. Now, pull the camera above the rooftops. The city looks beautiful from far away. Move closer. The streets are narrow. The ground is mud. Animals are everywhere. Horses are transport, which means the road is also a manure conveyor belt. Butchers, brewers, tanners, fish sellers, and thousands of households all pour their problems into the same crowded maze. Behind many homes are cesspits. A cesspit is basically a hole where the city puts its worst secrets. Some are lined with stone or brick. Many leak. So the city is not just sitting above waste, it is slowly absorbing it. After heavy rain, a cesspit can become less like a container and more like a neighborhood tea bag. Now imagine that sitting too close to a well. When a pit fills up, somebody has to go down there. In Tudor England, these workers were called gong farmers. The name sounds almost cheerful. The job was absolutely not.
They worked at night, hauling human waste from privies and cesspits into barrels. Daylight was for people pretending the problem did not exist. Night was for the people who actually kept the city functioning. Some cesspits produced dangerous gases. Some workers were overcome by fumes. One medieval worker was even reported to have drowned after a rotten cesspit cover gave way. That is not a job hazard. That is a nightmare with paperwork. And because people kept dumping filth into streets and rivers, cities started writing rules against it. If your town needs a law that says stop throwing waste into the river has seen things. Now, think about your own street, with no toilets for 1 week. Every apartment becomes a storage problem. Every elevator becomes a risk. Every trash truck becomes the most important vehicle in the city. Now, forget the visuals for 1 second. Imagine the smell. Actually, do not imagine one smell. Imagine layers.
Human waste from houses, horse manure from every road, rotting vegetables from markets, animal scraps from butchers, smoke from fireplaces, beer mash from breweries, tanneries using materials you would not want within shouting distance of dinner. A modern city has bad smells on trash day. A pre-modern city could feel like trash day got promoted to mayor. People fought back however they could. They burned herbs. They carried little containers of spices called pomanders. They covered things with ash or straw. They opened windows, then discovered the window had made a terrible offer. The rich could afford perfume, herbs, and scented cloth. The poor mostly got stronger lungs and lower expectations. And for centuries, many people believed bad air caused disease. This idea was called miasma. It was wrong. But if your whole city smells like a wet boot full of soup, blaming the air makes emotional sense.
The creepy part is that the smell was a clue. It just was not the killer. The real danger was smaller. Waste seeped into soil. Soil touched wells. Wells filled cups. And suddenly, a glass of water became a tiny ambush. You could not see the enemy. You could only smell the warning. Now, cut to a public toilet before privacy became sacred. Ancient Roman latrines could be long stone benches with holes in a row. People sat side by side, not metaphorically, actually side by side. Today, we avoid eye contact at the sink like it is an Olympic sport. Romans could sit near strangers while water rushed beneath the seats. That part was impressive. The cleanup part is where your brain starts buffering. The famous sponge on a stick, often called a xylospongium or torsorium, was associated with Roman toilet hygiene. Scholars still debate exactly how it was used. It may have been rinsed in water, vinegar, or salt water. No matter which version you choose, the modern paper roll suddenly deserves dramatic music. Medieval public toilets could be huge, too. London had public latrines called houses of easement. One famous facility, Whittington's Longhouse, reportedly had more than 100 seats. Imagine a stadium restroom? Now, remove the plumbing, the privacy, the air freshener, and most of the emotional support. Castles had their own version. The garderobe was a small room where waste dropped through a shaft or down a wall. So, yes, a castle could have towers, banners, stone walls, and a built-in gravity problem. The rich did not escape the issue. They just experienced it from higher architecture.
And then there was Versailles. The palace had thousands of courtiers, servants, guards, guests, and officials moving through rooms of gold and mirrors. But it did not have bathrooms the way a modern apartment has bathrooms. People relied on chamber pots, portable commodes, servants, and a lot of pretending not to notice. So behind the glittering hall of mirrors, there was an entire invisible choreography of servants carrying very visible problems. Imagine the fanciest palace in Europe operating like a luxury hotel where toilets are mostly a rumor. That is the kind of detail paintings politely leave out. Now, the story stops being funny, because the worst part was not the smell. It was what the smell meant. Human waste can spread disease through hands, flies, food, soil, and water. Before germ theory, people could see the filth and still miss the invisible part. The city looked dirty. The real danger was microscopic.
Cholera made that brutally clear. In the 1800s, crowded cities could lose thousands of people in outbreaks. Then came a twist that feels almost designed to punish optimism. Early water closets sounded like progress, but in places like London, more flushing often meant more sewage pushed into the River Thames. And the Thames was connected to water people might drink. That is like inventing a machine that cleans your plate by spraying the mess into your cup. In 1854, John Snow helped connect a cholera outbreak to contaminated water from a public pump. But many people still feared bad air more than bad water. Then came 1858. A hot summer baked the Thames into something London could not ignore. The smell became so intense near Parliament that curtains were soaked with chemicals to fight it. Imagine government officials trying to debate laws while the river outside behaves like an open sewer in the sun.
At one point, the smell was so disruptive that moving parliamentary business away from London was discussed. Suddenly, sanitation was not boring.
It was inside the building where laws were made. Politics discovered the fastest motivator in public health: sheer disgust. This is where the toilet stops being a joke. It becomes infrastructure. Engineers realized the solution was not just a better bowl. It was a hidden city under the city. Joseph Bazalgette's London sewer system redirected sewage away from the crowded center through huge brick tunnels. Some were big enough for workers to stand inside. Picture a cathedral underground. Now picture that cathedral built for the least glamorous job on Earth. The system used gravity, pumping stations, embankments, and millions of bricks. It was not just plumbing. It was a survival machine. That is the weird truth about modern life. The toilet looks simple because the complicated part is invisible. When you flush, water does not just vanish. It enters a network of pipes, treatment, engineering, budgets, maintenance crews, and decisions made long before you were born. A flush is not one action. It is a tiny handshake with an entire civilization. The bathroom also changed privacy. The door locked, the room became personal. The smell had a fan. Water arrived clean. Waste left without a bucket, alley, servant, barrel, or night cart. That is not a small convenience. That is one of the biggest upgrades humans ever gave themselves. And this is why a modern city without toilets would unravel fast. It would hit plumbing, water, trash collection, hospitals, restaurants, workplaces, and schools almost immediately.
People need toilets to keep drinking water from becoming a delivery system for disease. Without that barrier, a skyscraper becomes a vertical crowd with nowhere safe to go. A stadium becomes 50,000 emergencies sharing one concourse. A hospital becomes the last place you want sanitation to improvise. So when people romanticize the past, they picture castles, they picture torches, they picture ships, markets, cloaks, swords, and dramatic sunsets. They forget the bowl under the bed. They forget the frozen outhouse walk. They forget the night worker lowering a bucket into darkness. They forget the street where one bad step could ruin your shoes, your clothes, and your faith in humanity. They forget that a city is not clean just because the waste leaves the room. Before toilets, everyone lived closer to the body's consequences. Kings had nicer containers. Merchants had servants. Romans had drains. Castles had shafts. Cities had pits, fines, gutters, and desperate night labor. But the basic problem stayed stubbornly equal. Everyone produced waste. Everyone needed distance from it. For most of history, that distance was way too short. The toilet is not just a piece of porcelain. It is a peace treaty between humans and biology. It is a locked door between you and several thousand years of bad options. It is why your morning routine does not involve a candle, a bucket, or a dangerous walk through mud. And that may be the strangest part. The greatest inventions do not always look dramatic. Sometimes they are quiet. Sometimes they are tiled. Sometimes they are attached to a handle you press without thinking. So the next time you flush, appreciate it for half a second. Not too long. That would be weird. But just long enough to remember this. You probably would not survive a week before toilets. Not because you are weak, because modern life is built on the assumption that waste disappears instantly. For most of history, it did not, and the world smelled like it.